So last week we talked about the rape of a woman. I don't know about you guys, but that was a hard passage. That was tough. I don't know if this one's much better. Amnon raped Tamar, the sister of Absalom, and his own half-sister. And as we read in this passage, it's been 2 years since that event has taken place. And David was angry, but it doesn't appear that he did anything. He didn't take vengeance, didn't try to handle the situation, didn't try to restore the honor of Tamar. As both king and as father, it would have been his responsibility. The responsibility would have fell strictly on his, as both the government and the father, the parent, to handle this situation. Either, toss him in jail. As king, he could have had him killed. At very least, which I know sounds abhorrent in our modern society. I'm not saying it would be right today, but in that society, at very least, he should have made them get married to restore her honor. That would have been the very least thing he could have done. But what does he do? Does nothing. He got mad. And he doesn't do anything. I mean, how many of you guys know that feeling, though? Where something happens in your life, and you're like, I don't know if I can deal with this. I just stick my hand in the ground and pretend it doesn't happen. I mean, how many of you guys know that feeling, right? Like, I don't know if I can deal with this right now. Maybe if I ignore it, it'll go away. Does it ever work? No. But we do it. We see that even in today's families, where a brother will molest a sister, and the parents freeze up. They don't know what to do. They don't know, should I throw my son in jail? Should I? They don't know what to do. And this kind of situation is very common, unfortunately, because the father is supposed to handle the situation. But it doesn't seem as that David just kind of pretends it didn't happen, which is the worst thing you can do. Even today, the worst thing you can do is say, I'm not going to talk about it, I'm not going to work through it, I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen. Absolute worst thing you can do in these kind of situations. And that's what seems like David does. He failed to exert himself in his authority, which leaves a vacuum, a power vacuum. And Absalom is going to try and seize that. He's going to move into that authority. He's going to try to take over his father's kingdom and his responsibilities. So from this moment forward, this is the moment that Absalom will be sealed for his death. It'll lead to his death. Now, he asked his father to go with him out sheep shearing, because that's what time of year it is. You go shear the sheep. And he knew his father was going to say no. And so he takes Amnon, the oldest brother, who's the personal representative of David. And at a prearranged signal, Absalom's servant murders Amnon, and the king's sons all flee, and Absalom goes to his mother's home state, because she's not from local. She's from out. So she goes. And was Absalom right in taking blood vengeance for the rape of Tamar when his father did nothing? Well, I want to say yes. That's me speaking out of my own self, though. I know my personal desires would have been, I don't know if I would have waited 2 years. Because I know myself. I know that it's like, well, I would have, you ain't going to do nothing, I'll do something about it. But this passage seems to say that was wrong. Why? Because vengeance wasn't his to take. Vengeance wasn't his to take. So I know my personal feelings. I know some of you in the room, you feel the same way. You'd been like, 2 years? That ain't happening. Give me my knife. I'm going to go castrate someone. And that would have been a wrong response in this particular case. He should have been entreating constantly on David, you need to do something. It's your responsibility. But after 2 years, he gets tired of waiting. He set his mind to it. See, what happened is actually even worse than he just taking blood vengeance. That we probably could have gotten over that because we'd been like, he's justified. But what happens to Absalom is actually worse because he becomes obsessed with this moment in history. He becomes, that moment where his sister is raped becomes the core identity that he's found in. That is who he is. That's what he thinks about. He becomes bitter and rageful, plotting against his brother, his half-brother, plotting against the king, his father, because he's not doing what he thinks he should do, plotting against how he can take authority. He even, if we read in 2 Samuel 14, verse 27, it says that 3 sons and a daughter were born to Absalom. Now notice we don't get the 3 sons' names here, but his daughter's name was Tamar, and she was beautiful. The exact same wording we had about his sister. He names his daughter after his sister. This has become the moment that defines his life. This is what he thinks about. This is what he obsesses about. This is his identity. And yes, it was a horrid event. And yes, he was right in trying to, that he should have tried to seek his father to do something. But when he becomes obsessed, it leads to his own sin. Now, instead of it just being on Amnon, he's got his own problems that he's not dealing with. He's obsessed. He's obsessed with this moment in time, and he's stuck in the past. He decides, well, I'm going to be like Lamech. If you read Genesis chapter 4, right? If God's going to avenge Cain 7 times, I'm going to be like Lamech. I'm going to avenge 7 times. I'm going to be my own moment. I don't need God. I can take that place. I'm going to be the one that strikes him down. God, you didn't do enough. David, you don't know. God sent David. David was supposed to handle this. This is not on God. God appointed David to handle this. David's not doing what God has told him to do. But he's still saying, God, it's your fault. You didn't strike him down, right? You probably wanting a lightning bolt to come strike him. That's a lot of times what we want, right? Come strike down my enemy with a lightning bolt. God is not Zeus. That is a false god the Greeks made. God is bigger than that. And he appointed David to take care of the situation. David doesn't. And he becomes trapped, unable to move from this past. Just like Cain, he's going to kill his brother. He becomes trapped in this moment of the past. And recovery, health, doesn't happen when we're stuck in the past. It doesn't, we can't just, when we're not moving, life is going to move on without us. And we become stuck. And we become bitter and angry and wonder why everyone else isn't feeling so bitter and angry, and then you're angry at them because they're not feeling so bitter and angry too. But life has moved on. Now, Don't hear me say you need to get over it. Let me ask you, have you ever been told by someone, or maybe you've told someone, hey, get over it? Does that ever work in your own personal life? Or you've ever said it to someone, they're like, oh, you're right, I need to get over this. That doesn't work. That's not how that works. It's like someone says, oh, you broke your leg, get up and walk it off. That doesn't work. So don't hear me say get over it, but what we need to do is when we get in that attitude that traps us, is that we can't move forward in life. We can't heal. We can't let it become a scar. That scar will always be with you, but it doesn't have to define you. That moment when you're stuck in the past, you know you can't change it. You can't change the past, no matter how many movies you see where you can't do that, right? There's no letter you can put it in a magic mailbox and it goes back in time so you can have someone else stop it. Some machine where you can go chase down the 6 monkeys or send a robot to do your dirty work. There's none of that. We can't do any of that. You can't change the past. What we have to do is we have to move forward in the present. And that sin, that those someone else's sin or our own sin, or those own events, those moments in history, they can trap us. And like assault, that's a horrible thing. But it can still trap us. And that's what the devil really wants, isn't it? Wants us stuck in the past. Wants us stuck. Wants you trapped. Wants you bitter and angry and full of regret and living in the past. Why? Because if you're there, you're not a threat in the future. You're not a threat now. You're living back then.